Greetings, managers! With midfield still being king in Hattrick, it's time to rank the top midfielders in the game. Hey guys, I'm Uncle Mish, bringing Hattrick content for our great community. If you'd like to support my channel, please subscribe and ring the notification bell. And for all you curious cats, I will leave timestamps in the description below so you can hop and skip right to the content. With that being said, let's talk about midfielders, the most influential role on ball possession, which decides chance distribution, and we all know how much that's important for you to win the games. Midfielders have four important skills: playmaking being the primary, with three secondaries: defense, passing, scoring, and in some cases, wing. I'll talk about four variations of the midfielder and divide each and every one of them into three ranks. S being the badass anti-players, A being the really good midfielders you'll find in the top and best teams of your country, and B tier, that's probably the minimum midfielder that is good enough to play in the top division. And one final note before we start, I'll try to talk about pricing, but with midfield being so important, midfielders are probably the most saturated position in the game. This means that for the B tier midfielders, sometimes the prices will be ridiculously funny and low. The A tier midfielders will cost you much more, but the S tier midfielders will still be super expensive. Let's start with the standard midfielders. For the S tier, they'll have it all: 18.5 to 19 playmaking, defense around 10, passing around 12 to 14, and scoring around 10 as well. Such players will cost you around 15 million euros and they'll be the best in the game. Going down to the A tier, well, you'll have to yield something. Either some primary level, with playmaking being around 17-18, you will probably lack a little bit of defense. Passing will be pretty much the same, but you'll maybe have slightly less scoring as well, and the prices could be around maybe 10 million euros, 8 million euros, something like this. The B tier inner midfielder, well, you have so much of those. They'll be either mono-skill players with only playmaking, very high playmaking, but pretty much nothing else maybe except some passing, or they'll have worse playmaking, like 16, 17, with a little bit of defense, some passing, and maybe even no scoring whatsoever. But the prices are so ridiculously low. I think for 4 million euros, 5 million euros, you could definitely find inner midfielder that will be good enough to stay in the top divisions. The next variation of the midfielder will be the defensive one. It allows you to significantly increase your defense rating while still contributing to the midfield. Those kind of midfielders will require only three skills: two primary, one being playmaking and defense, and one secondary being passing. The best specialty for this kind of player is the powerful one, because playing him as a defensive inner midfielder will turn him into the sitting midfielder that could destroy some attacks of your opponent. So those kind of players are pretty specific, and the prices would be much higher than the normal one, especially for the A and B tiers. So the best one that I found in the transfer market is this guy, but for the S tier the playmaking will be at least 18, defense will still be 16, and passing around 12, 13, that's pretty much okay. For the A tier, the midfield will be around 16, 17 playmaking, defense will be around 14 to 16 with some passing, and for the B tier you will find players ranging around 15 playmaking and 13 defense. The prices of the defensive midfielders are quite high. The S tier will go down for about 15 million euros, the A tier will cost you 10 plus million euros, and even the B tier will cost you at least 7 million euros. One piece of advice that I can give you, unless you're a top team with deep pockets that can buy any player they want, The other teams could buy a 50-50 player. Having around 14-15 playmaking and defense, you could use him both as a center defender or a defensive inner midfielder depending on your team requirements. Third variation of the midfielders would be the offensive one. Those players need the passing and scoring secondaries much more than they need defense, and you will play them as offensive midfielders to mainly generate strong center attack. So for the tiers, for the S tier, the players will have about 18 playmaking, 17 passing, at least 10 scoring, and some defense, around 7 I would say. And I've found this guy, he's the closest one to an S tier with 18 playmaking, only 16 passing, only 9 scoring, and he's lacking some defense, but he is close. And for the A tier, they will have nice playmaking, I would say 17 playmaking, 15, 16 passing, some scoring, and some defense. That's an A tier offensive midfielder. And the B tier midfielders, offensive midfielders, well, they have playmaking, they have some passing, maybe they will have a bit scoring, they will have no defense at all, and that's about it. As the prices go, the prices of the offensive midfielders are the cheapest among all midfielders. The S tier midfielder will be priced around 8 million euros, the A tier will be priced about 5-6 million euros, and the B tier, I would say you could find those players for even 2 million euros. If you see big resemblance between offensive midfielders and defensive forwards, that means you are right. For the most part, they are pretty alike, and sometimes you could use your defensive forward as an offensive midfielder if you feel like it. The last variation would be the midfielder towards the wing. Those kind of players gain contribution from 4 skilled, 2 primary, 1 playmaking and wing, and 2 secondary ones, defense and passing. Those kind of players don't get any contribution from scoring at all. When you play those players towards the wing, they will get you crazy amount of side attacks, sometimes 2.5 to 3 more levels of this specific side. The build of these players, for an S tier player, they will be around 18 playmaking, 16 wing, 10 defense and 10 passing. But sometimes you could even find an S plus tier on the market, and this beast is on a level on his own. 19 playmaking, 17 wing, 10 defense, 8 passing. That's just crazy scaling, and that's an S plus player. So for the A tier, they will be pretty good. 17 playmaking, 15 wing. Sometimes they would be a double 16 players as well on the A tier. Nice defense, nice passing. That's an A tier player. For the B tier, there will be worse. 15 playmaking, 15 wing, and defense and passing. The triple 15 playmaking, wing, passing as a B tier player as well, when you don't need any defense at all on your team, but you are going only for attack. The prices of the S tier players are around, I would say, 12-13 million euros. This beast, the S tier player, S plus, he will cost even up to 20 million euros. The A tier will be around 9 million euros, and for the B tier you could find players around 5-6 million euros. And one last trick that I wanted to show you, if you don't have money for a specific midfielder towards the wing, but in some situation you could use your second winger as a midfielder towards the wing with the strong winger, and use your other inner midfielders to generate center attack, and this way we will have at least 2 strong side attacks. Make a quick summary. With midfield being so important, midfielders are among the most important positions in the game. There are 4 variations of the midfielder. The standard one, offensive, defensive, and midfielder towards the wing. Each and every one of them contributes differently and adds versatility to your team. The most important specialities are the powerful one for the defensive midfielder and head quick and unpredictable speciality to all the others. You could definitely add the support specialty in the mix as well. One thing you should never do is use the technical specialty for your midfielder, because if this technical midfielder will get man mark, you will lose tremendous amount of midfield contribution, and you should surely lose the midfield and maybe the game as well. Another thing you should take into consideration is overcrowding. Every time you are using more than one inner midfielder, you will get diminishing returns on the contribution of the others. If you will play with my players here, you will see each and every one of them will contribute 3 levels to my midfield by his own. But while I'm using my second one, he's only gaining 2.5 levels, and the third one will give me 1.25 levels to my midfield rating. So I'm not saying you should never use 3 midfielders, because sometimes you really need to do anything to win midfield, but just remember, in cases you don't need to win midfield so hard, sometimes it's better not to use 3 inner midfielders. By the way, I'm really excited making this video about inner midfielders, because in my second team I'm building my team around 3 homegrown midfielders. I call it the 3 Musketeer project. Otos, Portos and Aramis are already 26 and 27 year old, about to become an S-tier hybrid between a standard and an offensive midfielder. They will get at least 18 playmaking, they have already 15 passing, 10 scoring, some defense, and even in 2 of them some wing throw into the mix. I'm really curious, which kind of midfielders are you using in your teams, and do you still think midfield is key in Hattrick? As always, just remember, Hattrick is more than a game, it's community. Hope you like the video, and I'll definitely see you around.